It was an unbelievable performance by the Amboy Clippers in the 8-man state championship game, and it's a rematch in the Class 1A state championship game. We got a lot of football to talk about here, Mitch. It's a great week.
Stage is set. We're down to the final 16 here across the state. So we got a great semifinal action to recap and look forward to another great 2 days of state championship football coming up this weekend.
We got a ton of coverage to bring to you this week. We got special guests on. We got coaches' interviews. We got uniforms to talk about. We're wasting no more time. Let's get into it. Talking Illinois high school football.
If your goals are as high as you talk about, tonight's the night you go out and just take one more step.
It's a view from the West.
And it starts right now!
Welcome into View from the West podcast, the podcast covering Illinois high school football on the western side of the state of Illinois. I'm your host, Greg Armstrong, joined once again, as always, by Mitch Stormer. Mitch, as you said, the stage is set. We have 8 matchups ready in the 11-man ranks. We got a state championship game to cover from the 8-man ranks. This is a huge week for View from the West. So much content coming out. So much content is here. It's exciting, man. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it's a busy busy week for us, for sure. But that's what the fans crave from us. So, yeah, things worked out in our favor here in 1A especially. So a lot of great coverage to be had in that game particularly. But, looking across the rest of the classes here, a lot of great matchups. Teams we don't cover it, we may not know a whole lot about, but we know historically that they're really good programs. We've seen performances from these teams that should make for a really exciting 2 days on Friday and Saturday. So looking forward to this.
Well, let's set the stage here for this week's episode, plus all of the other content we have coming out this week on View from the West. On this episode, we'll be recapping the 8-man state championship game. We'll be talking about Amboy's impressive performance in their win for a state title, but we're also obviously covering the huge matchup in Class 1A, the rematch between Lena-Winslow and Camp Point Central. When we're talking a rematch between Lee Win and Camp Point Central, we got to bring in some of our experts, Mitch. We got Kyle Kampmier, who covers NUIC Football. He'll be talking Lena-Winslow. We got Logan Walters. He covers WIVC Football. You can find them on Twitter. Both those guys are in here, as our resident experts, talking Lena-Winslow and Camp Point Central. I'm excited for this matchup. It was a good game last year. Lena-Winslow obviously came away with the win. Camp Point Central is playing some great football right now. And obviously Lena-Winslow is, they always seem to be playing great football. So what a matchup we're going to get into in a few minutes on that one for sure.
Yeah, Greg, we don't live in the golden age of boxing anymore, but this is 2 heavyweights going at it. Once again, obviously they met last season. So to have these 2 teams, 2 teams that we looked at the beginning of the year that we hoped would make it this far. They played like that. They got through the gauntlet of the 1A playoffs. And here they are, a rematch in 1A. Couldn't be more excited about it.
Yep. Well, stick around for that conversation. We'll be breaking that game down, talking about how they got there and what it'll take for each team to grab the win at Hancock Stadium this coming weekend. And if you want to hear more about the Lena-Winslow Camp Point Central rematch, I sit down one-on-one with head coach Rick Aaron from Lena-Winslow and head coach Brad Dixon from Camp Point Central. Those interviews you can find in our podcast feed or on our YouTube channel. Those should be available on Tuesday, depending on when you're listening to this episode. And Mitch, we got to promote the most anticipated episode of the season, at least for us anyway.
Yeah.
The annual UniView State Championship preview episode. Tell us what the fans can expect out of this one, Mitch.
Well, it's pretty self-explanatory there, Greg. We're gonna look at all 16 matchups from a uniform perspective. I should say 8 matchups with the 16 teams. We'll look at the uniforms. We know which ones they're going to wear, or at least we know who's going to be home and away. Some of these teams have some different alternate uniforms that we'll talk about as well. But we'll take any stats or any knowledge of the teams aside, and we'll try and predict our winners based primarily on who looks better according to us. So yeah, this will be a lot of fun. Already starting to do a little bit of the homework on this. A lot of great matchups in the uniform division this year. So yeah, looking forward to having that. broken down for the fans.
I'm excited to get into it. I've seen a couple pictures of some different uniforms that we're going to be talking about. So yeah, there you have it. The UniView State Championship preview episode should be available on Wednesday. Now that'll be on our podcast feed, but Mitch, this is a visual conversation. So I encourage everyone to head to our YouTube channel. You can head to YouTube, search View from the West, find that video, because that's going to be where we're showing the images, we're showing the uniforms as we're discussing them. So you can, kind of form your own opinions as we break down the matchups. Like I said, toss the records, toss the stats out the window. We're analyzing every matchup solely based on the look, the helmets, the jerseys, all the good stuff there, Mitch. So, all right, well, a lot of football to talk about, but before we get into all that talk, you know who we got to thank.
We're going back to Kewanee because tonight's episode is brought to you by our friends at Breedlove Sporting Goods, Western Illinois' premier sporting goods store for uniforms, apparel, equipment, awards, and online team stores. They provide all the same sporting goods services as the big nationwide companies do, but with a faster turnaround, and their uniform pricing is just a fraction of the cost you are probably used to. They offer brand names such as Adidas, Under Armour, and Nike, and are extremely responsive with any inquiries. With a primary focus on the western side of the state of Illinois, Breedlove Sporting Goods is the fastest way to outfit your team. Check them out on Facebook or at breedlovesports.com, or shoot Cal Breedlove an email at calbreedlove@gmail.com for more information.
And Mitch, with the season winding down, Christmas is right around the corner, or maybe some banquet season for some football teams in our area. If you're looking for that perfect gift, if you're looking for that, that item to give, to put under that Christmas tree, how about you check out Mathewson's mini helmets? They offer totally custom mini helmets or decals for your school. You can find them on Facebook or on Twitter. Of course, they were the sponsor, the driving force behind the Mathewson's Mini Helmets Player of the Week. We handed out 9 helmets this year, customized View from the West helmet awards this season. So we thank Mathewson's Mini Helmets. You can find them again on Facebook or on Twitter. So, all right, the way this episode will go, we'll talk about the 8-man state title game. We'll talk Class 1A with Kyle and Logan. And then, of course, we'll get into classes 2A through 8A. Mitch, would you call it like the Cliff Notes or like the IHSA State Championship for Dummies here? We kind of give you the scene setter and a little bit of the breakdown.
Yeah, we're not going to get too much into it. Again, since there aren't really teams that we cover. But if you're going to be like you or I probably there on Friday and Saturday watching all these games, you get a little bit of a primer, just so a little bit of information going into each of those matchups.
Absolutely. There we go. All right. Well, before we get into that, let's talk 8-man state championship. Mitch, I know you and I both had our eyes on this one. Yep. Amboy gets the win over Ridgewood in the I8FA State Championship game for 2023. The Clippers 74-22. Mitch, it's one of the most impressive performances, especially when you talk about a state championship type stage. One of the most impressive performances I think I've ever seen here from the Clippers. What a game. What a game for the Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, from opening kickoff, you kind of got that sense that this was going to be Amboy's night, and it seemed like when those first couple of punches came from Amboy, it just didn't look like Ridgewood was going to have it to be able to withstand that, because they came in so fast and so often. Again, Amboy's been doing this all year. This was a close game in the regular season, but boy, whether they made adjustments or whatever they did, they were ready to roll from the jump on Friday night.
Yeah, I couldn't believe, the first few minutes of this game, Amboy led 14-0 before Ridgewood ever took an offensive snap. Amboy took the opening kick. Landon Welchel had about a 50-some yard run into the red zone. They score on the next play. The ensuing kickoff is fumbled by Ridgewood. Amboy scoops it up. They end up scoring one play, 2 plays later. It's, in the blink of an eye, it's 14-0. And then another blink of the eye, and it's 28 or even more than that, 28-34-0. I mean, it was so fast and so furious for this Clippers team. Credit to them. I mean, it's just such an impressive performance all the way around.
Yeah, I think this was their third time getting into the 70 points plus range on the year. So certainly a team that was capable of doing that, but kind of like you mentioned at the beginning, to do it in a state championship setting against a team like Ridgewood, who we were really impressed with, especially on defense, against a team that played Amboy close in the regular season. Yeah, this was just it was efficiency, really, because like you were saying, it was quick drives, it was quick scores. Eddie Jones was 3 of 4 passing for 97 yards and 3 touchdowns. They all went to Brennan Blaine. So he had 3 catches for 3 touchdowns. He also had a rushing touchdown. So
I'd say that's pretty efficient. Yeah.
They really were impressive on both sides of the ball, because certainly we know what their offense can do, but they completely shut down Ridgewood in this one too.
Yeah, I mean, just offense, defense, special teams. The Clippers were doing it, in all 3 phases, and it just, again, I think what's so impressive, you kind of hit on it a little bit there, is that this was a very good Ridgewood team. Like, to see this type of performance, sure, you see some lopsided games throughout the regular season. Certainly Amboy's had those this year, but depending on the opponent, it doesn't always catch your eye. But this really caught my eye. I couldn't believe what I was watching because I've been so impressed with Ridgewood. It just, and I don't want to keep piling on Ridgewood, but it really impressive game for Amboy here. Landon Welchel finished with 259 yards, 3 touchdowns on 10 carries. Quinn Leffelman rushed for 50 yards and a touchdown on 5 carries. So just, it seemed like every opportunity, the line was creating some huge holes. And once those Amboy running backs got through that first level into the second level, they were usually able to outrun at least 1 or 2 Ridgewood defenders. It just, they were just hitting the holes and they knew what to do with it. They were, making guys miss, running past guys. Overall, just, impressive effort and a great way to cap off this kind of 2-year run where we saw Amboy here a year ago in the state championship game and they fell short to West Central. It seemed like, we were eyeing them as the next state champion. And there was, I think there's some pressure that goes into that, right? I think they knew it. We were talking about it. Everybody was kind of talking about it, and they delivered. They didn't flinch all year long. They run the table 13-0. They get that state championship.
Yeah, it's credit to Coach Tyson Powers for having his team ready to go. And this team loses a handful of seniors, some big playmakers, but Eddie Jones comes back, Quinn Leffelman comes back. Don't have the whole scope of what Amboy's going to look like next year. But regardless, like you mentioned, to come back from last season where they fell short and to have the season that they did, to have the playoff run that they did, and then to have this performance in the state championship game is a complete credit to the entire Amboy program and a job well done.
So Coach Powers is our friend on Twitter, but we should also give a shout out to the head coach, Scott Payne, who I don't think is on X.
Yes. Yeah. I got him mixed up. That's my fault. Sorry.
No. My fault. No, but it, like I said, Coach Powers is our kind of connection on Twitter. So that's where we end up, thinking. Yeah. But yes, Scott as well. Congratulations to them. And Mitch, I saw a really cool story from, Shaw local media from out of the Sauk Valley area. Cody Cutter wrote an article about the, we say Amboy, but we mean the Amboy Lamoille, Ohio co-op. And he pointed out in his article, this is the first state championship for any sport, for any athlete in Lamoille or Ohio's high school's histories. So a really cool, experience for those athletes. There are 9 players in total from both Lamoille High School and Ohio high schools. So really cool for them to be able to, be the first state champions to walk the halls in those high schools. Very small high schools. I think combined, both those high schools are under 100. So, we're talking around 50 enrollment for both high schools. I think Lamoille is a little bit bigger than Ohio, but either way, just a really cool opportunity for these kids to be part of a state championship. And that's kind of what this 8-man division is all about, right? It's giving some of these smaller high schools an opportunity to compete on a big stage.
Yeah, I don't know if we mentioned this, but it's at least Amboy's first state championship in football since 1984. But to bring that home for the first time for those two communities, it's a great thing for, when you have a consolidation like that, and then certainly when you go from 11-man to 8-man, to have any sort of success is going to be special for those communities. So yeah, congrats to everyone in that long history of Clipper football for hanging in there. They've always been a great community, a great football town, great football towns, I should say. And you could tell from the crowd they were into it. They traveled well, and at least they got some warmer weather this year. It wasn't as cold as previous years have been. So yeah, congrats again to the entire Amboy, Lamoille, Ohio football community.
Mitch, I saw one of the photos after the game, and man, I love in the I8FA, they still hold up a big old trophy. Have you seen the 8-man trophy? It's legit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a plaque. It's a big old trophy, and I love it. It feels very old school IHSA.
Wonder if they have to travel around to the three schools for that. Maybe it's just like,
I know. Well, like Cody's article just mentioned that like the trophy would probably be in Amboy, it would probably live in Amboy. But man, I do hope they do some kind of like, school assembly and carry that thing through the hallways. You'd have to, right? I hope we see or hear about that. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Let it reside in Lamoille, Ohio for a little bit. Come on.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, Mitch, you talked about Amboy fans, community traveling well. On the opposite side, Ridgewood, that Ridgewood Spartan community really traveled well. I mean, throughout the playoffs also. Mm-hmm. Like they had a great showing in Martinsville the week before in the semifinals, a great showing here nearby in Monmouth. It was really great for, to see that place packed on both sides. It didn't go the way they wanted it to, but man, one night, one game does not define a season. And right. Coach Elder tweeted that out, something to that effect on Saturday morning or Friday night. And just really great to see, to keep that perspective and know that this has been a program that's been building themselves, and to get to this game, forget the outcome, to get there. There's very few student athletes that can say they played in a state championship football game, even to get there. So yeah, great on them, for being there, for making that run.
Well, and only in their second season in 8-man. So quick success for the Spartans here, and probably sustained as well with the type of program that they have.
Yeah. Ridgewood's Riley Couture threw a pair of late touchdowns in this one to Preston Moriarty, two seniors on that Spartans team that have really led the way, and really been, constant names that we've said week in and week out. Congratulations to them and to all the seniors on kind of leaving your mark. I mean, this same as Amboy, this Cambridge program, when they were the Cambridge Vikings, they went to a state championship game, I believe in 2005. And, we're a really good team in the Lincoln Trail Conference there for a few years. Really great program. And, now that they've consolidated or, co-opt here, this is, getting to a state championship game is another high water mark for this program. And so congratulations to Coach Elder. I know that we also had Coach Elder, the other Coach Elder, your namesake, Mitch Elder. He was also listening in on Friday night to our episode. And we, corresponded back and forth a little bit Friday night, and he really appreciated our coverage. And I, thanked him for a great season. And I've talked to Coach Pat Elder throughout the season as well. I know he really appreciates our coverage. So I just want to give a shout out to them and, congratulate them on a great season and in a great effort here. And I'm excited to see what's next for them. You look at Amboy, and Amboy fell short, and the next year they were state champions. Where does that leave Ridgewood? I don't know, because, Amboy's going to be good again next year, but I think this Ridgewood program is not going anywhere. They put themselves on the map. They're going to be here.
Yep. And go back to the Friday night. If you haven't listened to that, you can find on our feed the instant reacts from that. Shout out to Kyle Kampmier for hopping in there. I wasn't able to join on Friday night, but shout out to Kyle who joined from the car and coming from that game. So if you want to hear more from that game, more than we just listened to just now, you can jump back and listen to that instant reacts from Friday.
Yep. Good plug there, Mitch. The instant reacts for the state championship game is available on Twitter. It was, we were live on Spaces. So forgive some of the audio, some of the technical issues. I don't know. I don't think my microphone sounded very good throughout. And Kyle,
it's a weird thing to like start it and then add somebody. It's I don't know.
Yeah. And Kyle was leaving Monmouth, so his coverage was
body going through those back.
Coverage was a little spotty there, but we made it work. So anyway, it was great conversation. That's the important part. Is great content. Kyle was bringing all the good content there as he took in the 8-man state championship game.
A lot of listeners too.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, we had a lot of people listening in and out live while we were recording. So that's a lot of fun. That's where I saw, Coach Elder listening
Yeah.
in. So that, that was a lot of fun to see people listening in. So, well, once again, congratulations to the Amboy Clippers. They've been a fun team to cover this year and going back to last year. They followed through. The expectations were there and they delivered for sure with an exclamation point here in the state championship game. They're your 8-man state champions for 2023. Well, Mitch, should we take a quick break and then we'll be joined by Kyle Kampmier, Logan Walters. We'll talk all things Class 1A state championship, the rematch between Lena-Winslow and Camp Point Central. Brink Sportswear offers totally custom made-to-order football uniforms that allow coaches and athletic directors to take control of their brands. The uniforms are available in sublimated and tackle twill. They offer free digital mock-ups, free shipping on team orders, and free physical samples before you buy so you know exactly how you're spending your program's money. Uniform sets start at $99 for sublimated and $120 for tackle twill. You can find them on Twitter or go to brinksportswear.com. View from the West podcast is also sponsored by the Cupcake Cartel, gourmet cupcakes that are made to order. Over 40 flavors, including wedding cake, lemon blueberry, strawberry milkshake, snickerdoodle, and Oreo. Perfect for weddings, birthdays, showers, fundraisers, or any event. You can find the Cupcake Cartel on Facebook. We thank them for their support. Welcome back. Let's get into the main event for this week's episode. The Class 1A state championship game, the rematch between Lena-Winslow and Camp Point Central. Mitch, it's kind of a matchup we had our eye on for a long time. Obviously, both these teams were the number one seeds in the North and the South. And here we are. We got that matchup. It took some big wins along the way, but we got here, the rematch, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, this is what you like to see. We talk a lot about 1 versus 32 rankings and how we think that should be it. Well, these are the top two teams in 1A. So regardless of how they were seeded or if it was North and South, we got here. We got to the two best teams in 1A once again, playing for the Class 1A state championship. So yeah, it's everything that we hoped for. It's two really, really good programs. Another season for both of these schools of undefeated football. Really haven't shown a whole lot of signs of distress other than Lena in the semifinals, which we'll get into that. But yeah, you couldn't ask for anything more here in a Class 1A state championship.
Yeah, really excited about this one. And, if we're going to be breaking down Class 1A, this matchup, we got to bring in some local experts, some guys who know the ins and outs of these teams and the conferences they come from. So we bring in Kyle Kampmier from NUICFootball.com. You can find NUIC Football on Facebook and on Twitter. And we also got representing the WIVC, Logan Walters from WIVC Football. You can find them on Twitter as well. Well, Kyle, you're familiar to the show here. You've been around a little bit. You know a thing or two about Lena-Winslow?
Just a little bit. I've only been following them for a few years. Not much.
They give you some talking points over the years. So yeah. All right. Well, we'll bring you in. That's why you're here to talk Lena-Winslow. But we also got Logan Walters. Logan, first time on View from the West podcast. Welcome in. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Very big pleasure to be here. I obviously represent just a part of the WIVC. I want to thank my other admins that helped me out over there. I'm not quite the expert you might find in, Shuck or Jack Hall, but I have caught Camp Point several times this year and several times throughout the years as well since I've been covering them. And I'm very much looking forward to this Friday.
Yeah. Well, let's get right into it. When you've said you've watched Camp Point Central this year, you've had eyes on them. What have you seen throughout the season and in this playoff run? And I guess we'll start with what makes them different this year, or what do we expect out of this year's version of Camp Point Central in this championship game?
I think they have a lot more experience this time around. You have Ginnenbacher, Niekamp, Haben, Connor Griffin. They all had some playing time in the state game last year. And so I think that's helped them this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big part of, them being back here and maybe not being fazed by, some of the opponents along the way, especially maybe when you get into that state level. So Kyle, Lena-Winslow, we see them year in and year out. They're 3-time defending state champions. what is the identity of this year's Lena-Winslow team? Tell me about, the 2023 version here.
Well, the 2023 version definitely has a lot of senior leadership on it, but what it does not have is a lot of returning starters. That was one of the big focal points at the start of the year, was that Lena-Winslow only had 4 returning starters, albeit the biggest one being Gage Dunker on both sides of the ball, returning from a defensive line, which they've moved him to linebacker this year, and of course at the fullback position, where he's right up there in NUIC rushing folklore now, which is great. He's having a hellacious, dead awesome senior season for sure. But one of the things about this Lena-Winslow team is their offensive line is one of the biggest lines that they've had. And when you take a look at the returners there, Odin Stabenow and Tanner Kempel are the only 2 guys that returned off of last year's line. Odin weighs about 280 pounds and Tanner Kempel weighs about 230 pounds. But then they've been able to add a couple different pieces to that with a few different guys. One of them being Gannon Dunker, the youngest Dunker brother, who's only a freshman. So, he's been able to get some playing time in and out. And now they've reestablished him into a starting role there, which has been good for his ability to grow and get better at the same time. But you got a couple other guys on there like Luke Stabenow, who has played mostly on the defensive line. And then there's a couple other guys, too, that have done an excellent job for Lena-Winslow to start off the year. And they continue to just get better and better.
Yeah. When you talk about getting better and better, I feel like this Camp Point Central team, we knew they'd be good this year. But I think really in this playoff run, you've really seen them kind of, I don't know. It just seems like they're playing their best football right now. And Logan, you've been in some of these games in this playoff run. What have you seen from this team? What's working so well for them right now?
Elijah Genenbacher has kind of just been red hot throughout this playoff run. He's got over 600 yards rushing and I think 14 touchdowns. And a lot of other people have stepped up as well. Jack Thompson has made 2 amazing plays in each of the last 2 games. More in regards to the special teams, Marco Rodriguez has been phenomenal. Just the schemes they've put out there, I think they've recovered, I don't know if it's 4 or 5 onside kicks in the last 2 games. Their special teams has just been on another level since they've entered the playoffs.
Yeah. Mitch, talk a little bit about, how important is it from what you've seen and what you've read about Camp Point Central, and they're really playing great football, all 3 phases. It's offense, defense, and special teams. Sometimes it sounds cliche to say they're doing it in all phases of the game, but they literally are. They've had some huge special teams plays.
Yeah, they've been utilizing that element of surprise, right, on their kickoff teams. It certainly helped in the Althoff game. You have to have plays like that in order to defeat a team like Althoff. Now, we talked a lot about whether that was an upset or not. And I still don't believe that it was, but still, the quality of Althoff requires you to catch them off guard, and that's where if you have that ability to have those onside kicks, and if you've seen the highlights of how they do it, they do it to perfection. It is so good. It's so cool to watch. But yeah, this team has been on fire all season. We've talked about, or we've seen their defense a lot. I don't know how many shutouts that they've had this year, but they're only averaging, I think, under 10 points a game allowed, and that offense is near 50. So this is a great program for the second straight year. I think they've won 25 of their last 26 games now, and they only 1 losses to Lena-Winslow. So
yep, they
get them again. And this is 2. The similarities between these 2 teams are really, really. It's just so interesting that. Well, I say it's interesting, but it's also not, because you expect 2 teams of the caliber of Lena-Winslow and Camp Point Central to get back to the state championship, and here we are once again.
Yeah. Looking at this state championship game, Logan, I guess we'll kind of start with, maybe the overarching question. What does Camp Point Central need to do different this year? Or what do you think needs to work, what needs to be effective to get over that hump, to get that win, to score some points against this tough Lena-Winslow team and to slow them down?
I think they really need to try and do a better job this year of controlling the clock. I think they need to do exactly what they did against Greenfield Northwestern last week in the first quarter. They came out the gate, opening drive, instant 8.5 minute opening drive. So I think controlling the clock would help them a lot. And honestly, other than that, just kind of stick to what they've been doing all year. Feeding Genenbacher the ball up the middle, and then having Paven jump it out to the outside.
Yeah, Kyle, when you look at, Lena-Winslow's end of things here, I think what's really interesting about this matchup is that you go from a challenge in the semifinals against a Chicago Hope team that really wanted to spread you out and really use their athleticism in the open field. And that was a great game. I mean, it came down to, an interception late in the game to seal that win for Lena-Winslow, a way they haven't been tested in a long time. But now you kind of fast forward a week, this challenge against Camp Point Central is the complete opposite. It's now a team that wants to kind of have the same look and feel that Lena-Winslow does. They do the same thing you do. So talk about, how different do you think practice is this week? I'm excited to talk to head coach Rick Arend. That interview will be available for people to listen to this week as well. But I can't wait to get his take on how different do you think practice looks this week as far as you're scheming for a much different looking team?
I think for Lena-Winslow, I think the biggest challenge was scheming for a Chicago Hope team that even on film, you could definitely tell that they were very athletic. One of the things that really impressed me about Hope from last year to this year was defensive wise, they definitely brought a different type of physicality that we saw against Lena-Winslow compared to what we saw against Forston just a year ago. Offensive wise, and Mitch said it last week on Hope with how they played Rova Williamsfield, was that Eddie Jenkins Jr. could just do about anything he wanted to because he was so fast. And the offensive line was so big that while they didn't seem like they were physical because they didn't do really well in the run game aspects against Lena-Winslow, but their pass blocking technique was very good. And they were big enough to give him a pocket and a hole. And then on top of that, his ability to evade oncoming rush and then his speed on top of that. And then the fact that he can just throw piss missiles all over the place, 60 yards down the field, and put it on the money was just impressive to see. I mean, watching him in person is even more impressive than watching him on film because you get to see his playmaking ability. And trying to scheme for that for Lena-Winslow is a lot tougher than what it is going to be as far as scheming for Camp Point Central, a team that runs a very familiar style of offense that Lena-Winslow sees on a regular basis. We've seen the double wing from Dakota. The double ring from Forston is almost identical to how Camp Point Central runs it. And with the amount of times that we've seen Forston and Lena-Winslow match up, especially in recent years, the familiarity and the practice for that is going to be similar for them. So I think this week, as far as game planning, I think it gets a little bit easier in the realm of defending them offensively. But to what Logan stated, something that we've seen out of Camp Point Central here in the past couple weeks in the playoffs is their tendencies on special teams where they've been able to place well-timed and unprecedented type of onside kicks to keep the ball away from the opposing team and allow them another opportunity to score. And that was really one of the things that you could see take place against Althoff Catholic when they beat them was they attacked right away on defense They were able to force a punt, get that blocked punt, convert it into a score the very next play. The ensuing kickoff, they force a fumble, recover it, punch that in a play or two later. And within less than 2 minutes of game time, you're already up 16-0. And then you allow Althoff to basically drive the field on you. You force an interception in the end zone. And 4 plays later, you're back at midfield. Then you're punching it in. And then you get the onside kick that we've seen all over social media, where it went right through the hands of Althoff's defender or receiver and right into the hands of CPC right on the sidelines to set up that 30-0 score. I mean, you could just see it just in the clips. I mean, I watched John Huff from Gateway Sports in his 30-minute flip view that he had, and that just shell-shocked Althoff. They didn't know what to do anymore. And that's the kind of things that physical power teams like Lena-Winslow and CPC can do, but that's a different element that CPC has been very good at doing right now. And like Logan said, they're really hot, and they're showing it on the field in all facets of the game.
Mitch, first of all, Mitch, piss missiles is the reason we bring Kyle Kampmier into this podcast. That's the analysis we need. That's the good stuff. But so hearing all that, Mitch, knowing that, 2 really good head coaches, what I'm really intrigued by in this matchup is you have 2 excellent head coaches as far as obviously building a program, but just being able to lead the team, getting that buy-in and game planning. I'm really impressed with what both these teams do. So I guess the question for you, Mitch, is who do you see having an advantage, as far as, going into this one? When you look at, can CPC get some of those, catch you off guard type of moments that they had against Althoff, or, some game planning things that, the defense doesn't see coming?
Yeah, watching that semifinal game, I think I learned more about Lena-Winslow than I would have had they won. You saw the Panthers get into a situation being down 2 scores in the second half that they haven't been in a long time. And that offense is not equipped to come back from that a lot. That's, when you're run first offense and you're essentially running against the clock and you have to make the most of every possession you have because you know what Hope can do on offense. Again, I was really, really impressed with their resolve because, again, they don't have to dig into their tool chest a lot. They haven't had to in a while. So for them to make adjustments on the fly, to be able to defend against a team running an offense that they do not face, right? That the Hope offense does not exist in the NUIC. I don't mean that as a slight to DUPEC. They just run things a little bit differently, a little bit different style there. But you saw them making those adjustments, like the play action passes, right? They passed, 6 times all year, and then they had two long touchdown passes there. You got to do those type of things to win those games when you're in those situations. So again, it had Lena-Winslow gone in and won, it wouldn't have surprised me. Like if they would have won like every other game, right?
Yeah.
But what I mean is just coming from behind in the second half, throwing in some wrinkles there. You saw Coburn Lynch kind of, it's not a coming out party for him, but he's going to be their star guy next year. So to see him play well on both sides of the ball, I've said it a bunch of times this year. It's really going to be hard to beat Lena-Winslow at their own game. I thought it was going to take Kyle. I texted you about this, what it would take to beat Lena, and I thought it was a dual threat quarterback, kind of what Hope had presented. It's really hard to beat Lena at their own game. CPC is incredibly talented. They do a lot of great things. This should be a really great matchup. I don't think if we were, if we lived in Vegas, that you wouldn't, make the spread very far, because this should be a close game. It should be hard hitting. It should go pretty quick, right? two rushing offenses. Yeah. But again, I just think with what Lena showed me, it almost like it unlocked a different level of Lena-Winslow that I didn't know that they had. And I think ultimately that might give them the edge in this game.
Yeah, Kyle, and talking to people, at the game, or if caught up with any coaches or players. Was that Hope game kind of a wake-up call, or I don't think they ever, lose focus. That's not what I'm intent. Lena-Winslow does not lose focus, but this one certainly tested them in a way they haven't really been tested. Is that a good thing heading into this state championship game?
I think so, because this team, like last year's team, just has a level of focus that they know that they can win, and they don't want to be the team that loses at the same time. That they take a lot of pride in knowing that they have a 32-game win streak. They take a lot of pride in knowing that they're going for their 4th consecutive state title. They want to be the team that sets history. They don't want to be the team that says, "Oh, we could have been that team." They don't want that. And I feel that Coach Aaron and his staff going into that game knew that they would be able to do things that they wanted to offensively. And I think that's a part that gets lost on the whole closeness of the game, is the fact that Lena-Winslow still outgained Hope in the game. I mean, they put up 416 yards of offense, 370 yards on the ground, and a lot of people forget that because of how close the game was. So it's not, yes, we saw Lena-Winslow drive deep into Hope territory a lot in that game and get turned away on downs more times than what we're used to seeing. And that credit comes from Hope just stepping up and playing some smash mouth defense that we're not used to them doing. But then at the same token, they had, you said it best. There's not a single team, probably Althoff really, with Deere Hill and Charleston Colden, are probably the only guys that are fast enough to match what Jamari West and Aaron Green had as far as speed capabilities. But Jaden Ellington is no Eddie Jenkins Jr. at quarterback. I've watched Lena-Winslow go up against Division I quarterbacks, and Eddie Jenkins probably threw the best ball I've ever seen out of a quarterback at the high school level in person. Wow. The ability of him, like I said, to either A, stay in the pocket, or B, get out of the pocket. And the fact that he could throw it on the dime against his body on the run, you just don't see that kind of athleticism, even at the 7A and 8A quarterbacks most of the times. The kid could flat out ball, and he could throw a mile. You talk about those guys that throw a country mile. That's Eddie Jenkins Jr., man. Yeah. In all essence, the fact that Lena-Winslow won the game isn't the surprise. As you stated, the more, actually it was Mitch that stated, the more impressive thing was the fact that they were down 2 touchdowns in the second half and were able to stay poised and then get back in and take the lead, and then able to hold on because they had other opportunities to put the game away. They were inside the 30 2 different times in the second half of the game, and they just couldn't convert. Yeah. And the way that Hope plays, they can change the field in a second. They're just that fast, and I've never seen anybody at the 1A level with that kind of speed where, and with a quarterback that can throw it 60 yards in the air and make it look easy. And, there was a big play that he had Green wide open down the right sideline, and it went into Green's hands and it came right back out. And had Green held on to that, we're probably talking about Chicago Hope being in the state championship game instead of Lena-Winslow right now.
Yeah. Mitch, what do you got? You had your hand raised.
I was going to say too, I think, Kyle, am I right that Lena had 5 turnovers, both with fumbles and turnovers on downs?
Yeah, 1 turnover on a fumble, and then 4 turnover on downs.
Okay, so 4 or 5 turnovers, whatever it was. Just that, again, that type of adversity that, and Logan, you can speak to this too on the Camp Point Central side. that's just another hurdle that they had to overcome that you hadn't seen Lena-Winslow really been put in this year. So again, just wanted to make that point as another. Not only were they down 2 scores, but they continually were having trouble running the ball, turnover on downs. They had that fumble that on Hope's side of the field. So again, it's just what they learned and how they overcame some things in the semifinal might just again give them the edge here.
Yeah.
I kind of have to agree with you a little bit. Lena definitely, I don't know if I'd say, you'd almost say they kind of got shocked, you know. I don't think anybody had really played with them like that all year. Camp Point didn't really have that. You know, Calhoun kind of gave them some pretty tough games early in the season and in the playoffs. But other than that, nobody was been able to really keep up with Camp Point this year.
Yeah, overall, this is just an exciting matchup, you know, because what I love about it is it's obviously the number 1 seeds on both sides, which we talked about in the beginning. But I think that now you have the experience of Camp Point Central back in this game, and you have Lena-Winslow, who's always, you know, geared up, always ready for the challenge. And they, you know, they rose up to the challenge last week and they got the job done. And now here they are. I'm just really interested to see, you know, how much of a difference does that game last year make for Camp Point Central, where maybe they're not quite as, you know, they're not quite as shook by that physicality right off the start. They've seen it once. They've been able to watch a full game film. You know, honestly, talking to Coach Dixon, and he said the best way we can prep for this year's game against Lena-Winslow is to watch the game film last year. So, you know, sure, they're probably going to watch some other games from this season, but I think a big part of planning for this one is to watch last year. And what did those players who are back on defense, what do they need to do differently? So I think they really are relying on, you know, this game, the game last year, to help them out in this game. So I guess we'll start going down the way here. What are the keys for Camp Point Central? What are the keys for Lena-Winslow? Kyle, I'll start with you. What's we've kind of talked, all about it, but, you know, when you get down to the bottom line here, what's the keys for Lena-Winslow to be successful in this one?
I think they got to get going early. I mean, and that's kind of cliche to a degree, but I think if they start with the ball, they have to be able to get Dunker going early. And then on top of that, be able to utilize Lynch off tackle as well to kind of be able to have that 1-2 punch. And then, you know, there's been other times where we've seen Nick Tippett or Lucas Fye also be able to contribute in the run game to give that proverbial 3-headed monster. Really, it's like a 2.5-headed monster this year. You got Dunker, you got Lynch, and then you got one of those 2 guys that are kind of getting the third realm of the carries. Defensively, though, you know, like Logan stated, you know, you got to be able to stop Genenbacher, but you also have to be able to contribute and pay close attention to Pabin. And, you know, CPC is going to run a belly series very similar to what Forreston does, where you're going to see a dive and then you're going to see a double dive. But what CPC does do a little bit different, and we've seen Forreston do it in the past too, but they kind of fake the dive one way and then they have the other wing back cut back the other direction. And when they can do that, you have to be able to stay sound, fundamental, stay home, play your gap responsibilities, of which I feel both teams, when it comes to defensive play, are very disciplined at that. You know, one of the things that we saw last year in this matchup was, you know, Lena-Winslow was never not in control. It's kind of like how you expressed their game with Anawan Wethersfield, that slow burn. Like, they were getting that 4 to 6 yards per carry, nothing off the top, but it was just consistent. Boom, 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 boom. And, you know, the thing is, and I remember talking to Logan about it even last year in the press box, they're always like that one tackle away from breaking it. But CPC would come up with that tackle. And, you know, even talking to like Coach Aaron, he stated that, the line play last year, he drilled the line at halftime. I mean, it was because they were right there. All they had to do was get that one extra block, and then you got Lobdell going 60 yards instead of 6 yards. And they just could not get to the edge to do that. And credit to CPC. I mean, they came up and they played a physical style defense, which we expect them to do. And to be quite honest, the biggest takeaway I had from last year's game was just the fact that up until the subs went in the game, they only had like 65 yards on the ground. They just couldn't move the ball at all until Lena-Winslow said, okay, we'll put our second string in. But defensively, I felt that they had the right game plan in place, right? They had the right game plan to slow down the Lena-Winslow offense, but they could not stop it. And, part of that into this year's game is that experience. And for Lena-Winslow, they got to get off the ball fast. They're not going to be able to sit back and wait, because if you sit back and wait against Camp Point Central, they have the experience. They have the confidence. They've already beat a team that most people across the state said could not be beat. So what else do they have to lose? This is their third trip to state in 5 years now. They're familiar with what they got to do. It's no more of that eye-opening, holy shit, we're at state now. It's here we are. We know what we want, and we're here. We have what we want in front of us. And that's one of the things I see in this year's CPC team is they just seem to have a different level of focus. And it's a focus that you see in Lena-Winslow. And to me, that does. It builds up for what we should expect to see, a great championship game that everybody is really honing in on. And the atmosphere and the energy starting to build up already. And here it is, only Monday night. But, man, I can't wait till Friday gets here.
Yeah, I think you spoke to something there that I completely agree with. I think that win over Althoff was obviously, huge just because it was, a quarterfinal win, and it was a win that a lot of people said, on paper, Althoff is going to, run their way to that state championship game. And I think that what's so big about that win is that you build that confidence, right? And now I think you just start playing with that extra level of confidence, knowing that any team can be beaten. If we execute, if we do our things, we can knock off anybody. And that's a dangerous recipe. I mean, Logan, you saw it firsthand, in that game against Althoff, and now what led into the game against, Greenfield Northwestern in the semifinal. It just seems like that confidence is there. They're rolling. That's got to be a huge key going into this state championship game as compared to years past.
Yes, confidence is going to play a huge factor. And honestly, I think both teams are just going to have very similar keys to the game. And like I said, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. They're both going to be trying to control the clock. I don't think this is going to be a very high scoring game at all. If I'm Camp Point, I'm having somebody tackle Dunker on every play. If I'm Lena-Winslow, I'm having somebody tackle Ginnenbacher on every play. These teams are so similar in so many different ways. It's hard to imagine.
Yeah. Logan, you talked about the offensive side of the ball, what CPC needs to do. Talk about on defense this year, this go around, an experienced defense that has a lot of speed. I mean, they really feel like they can get to the edge, and that, when guys try to beat them to the corner, they can get there and make those plays. And the important thing is then once you get there, you got to make that tackle. And like Kyle said last year, they would get there and make the tackle for the most part, but a few here or there, things that were, they didn't make the play. And that was the difference in that one. How big can defense be this year around, this go around with a little bit more experience?
I think it's going to help a lot. Caden Ekamp returns. He was a starter on the team last year as a freshman. He's a sophomore this year. Ginnenbacher, he was an honorable mention All-State last year. He was another starter. I think Pabin started on the defensive side of the ball. I think experience and their just ability to tackle in the open field is going to help them a lot this year.
Yeah. All right, Mitch. What say you on this championship game? What are the keys? What are you looking for to be the difference in this one?
Yeah, I think Logan said it best that the kind of the keys to win are going to be similar for both teams. Where and to Kyle's point too, it's a lot of cliches that are thrown around, but this is the type of game where it's true. You have to win the battle up front. So whoever is going to be able to control the trenches and open up those gaps for their running backs is ultimately going to be able to control the ball. So I feel like both teams are going to be trying to do that. Defensively, knowing how both of these offenses operate, it almost is like, to me, what defensive coordinators go through when you're going up against like the Navy or any sort of triple option attack. You have your assignment, stick to it. Don't get out of position. Your guy is your guy, and let someone else's responsibility be their problem. Because if you keep contained, you're going to keep those longer plays in check. Certainly, if Lena-Winslow starts doing their play action passes and having some fun, kind of misdirection or whatever it may be, if you get out of place there, they can take advantage of it. Both teams can do that. I don't mean that just from a Lena perspective. Both teams can do that. So I also think this will be lower scoring. Again, I said earlier, I think it'll be a pretty quick game because I think it'll just be a lot of runs. But again, if either team can stop the other from showing that element of surprise, right? If it's CPC doing anything on special teams, or if it's, again, Lena throwing in a play action pass here and there, whoever can stop the other team from that element of surprise, I think is going to have they're going to be holding the trophy at the end of the end of the morning.
Yeah. Mitch, if the team who ends up with more passing yards, if they end up winning the game, are you going to like boycott the winner, that they shouldn't be allowed to win with passing the ball?
It's bad enough that Lena did it once and then they did it twice. But then again, they needed to do it. So I can't fault them there. And they were great. Those play designs were really, really good. So to have that in your bag of tricks, all credit to the Lena coaching staff I would assume that they practice that a lot just in case they have to do it. And but yeah, I don't expect a lot of passing here on Friday morning.
Logan, speaking of the passing game, what have you seen from Camp Point Central this year? I know in the game against Althoff, they had a play where they dumped it over the top and kind of caught Althoff off guard on a passing touchdown. They have a couple guys that are weapons on the, outside that can go up and catch a pass this year, which may be a little different than what they've had in years past.
Yeah, they could definitely pass the ball. I think Nick Moore's completion percentage is around 65, 67%. One of their go-to guys is Jack Thompson. He's 6'4", so he's a guy you can occasionally just lob it up to if you need to, and if you're in a third and long. Occasionally, I think the pass you're referring to is I think it may have been a double pass or a halfback pass or something.
Yeah, that sounds right.
They threw it to Pabin, and it caught it right in front of me. I think it set him up. It was 1st and goal. But that was kind of another surprise play, But no, they can definitely pass when they need to.
Yeah. I think that, like Mitch, you just kind of called it out. I think there could be, that element of surprise with a play action pass or something that, catches that defense kind of asleep a little bit when they start, keying in on, one or two guys going up the middle or trying to, run between the tackles. So overall, it's just an intriguing matchup. I'm glad we have this game, this rematch. I'm excited to watch this one. Is it prediction time? Is that where we're going here before we wrap it up?
Yeah,
all right.
Let's do it.
All right. Who wants to go first? Who's the brave soul that wants to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
I was just about to say something, but go ahead, Kyle. I think I already saw yours on the page.
You probably did. I mean, I've broken down the numbers. I've taken a look at the spread. The spread has Lena-Winslow favored by 5. When you break down the numbers on scoring differential, it's got CPC favored by 4. My pick, I think when you take a look at how the two style of teams play, I do think it's going to be a close game. I think we'll start to see a little bit more scoring in the second half. I think it's going to be a chess match in the first half. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 3 offensive possessions by each team in the first half of the game. But I like Lena-Winslow 36-28, an 8-point score differential, and it could be even closer than that. And who knows? I mean, we could be talking about Camp Point Central even taking the title back home for them. But I do like Lena-Winslow in the game. I think they are the favorite. They are the number 1 ranked team. And I do expect CPC to come in here and put up more points this time around, having the returning players that they have and the familiarity of the big game.
All right, Logan, what say you?
Just about all season, since the beginning of the season, I kind of thought, Lena-Winslow, Althoff, they're just kind of on a tier of their own. Well, we saw how Camp Point handled Althoff. That's the past now. I think Camp Point, with the experience they're going to be bringing in from last year, they're not going to be as nervous. They hopefully won't have that early interception that really kind of got them down last year. Not to mention they'll have a pretty, like I said, earlier, they'll have a pretty good idea just of, what to expect from Lena, how physical they'll be. That, and paired with just how hot Camp Point's been, the confidence they're going to have going into this game, I think that gives them the slight edge. So I'm going to go with Camp Point 28 and Lena 24.
I love it. Mitch, what do you got?
Look, here's the thing. And Kyle, I'm going to throw something that you put out there on Twitter that we hadn't discussed yet. This is the first back-to-back championship rematch in Class 1A history. No previous year runner-up has ever made it back. So this is, there's history on the line here in more ways than one in this matchup. It won't surprise me if Camp Point Central is lifting the trophy at the end of the afternoon. But I'm going to stick to my guns that we've had all year, that you have to prove it to me that you can beat a Lena-Winslow team. Hope got close, closer than anybody's got in the past couple of years. Camp Point Central presents a very, very good opponent. I think for me, it's just a little too similar to Lena-Winslow to get over them. There's never been a team in 1A that have won 4 straight 1A titles. I think that will change on Friday morning. I've got Lena-Winslow 28-14 with a late score to pull away.
All right. I feel like my prediction is good, because when Kyle said his prediction, we were pretty darn close. I'm going to say Lena-Winslow is going to get the win 35-28. I agree with a lot of what all of you have said. I think that I'm hoping for a great game. I hope it's an instant classic, a game that we're going to be raving about, next week for just an all-time classic, kind of finish. And I think both teams are going to be, as ready to go as you possibly can be in a state championship game. By that, I mean, like, the focus is going to be there. I think both of these coaching staffs, both these programs, these kids, they're fully bought in. They're so committed. And I know that any team at the state championship game feels that way. But I think if you really watch Camp Point Central and you really watch what Lena-Winslow does, I think that these teams, they operate on another level. They really are, for high school level kids, they really are dialed in. And we've seen it play out this year in some huge games. Lena-Winslow saw it in the adversity they faced last week. Camp Point Central saw it against a very talented Althoff team to get that win. I think when it comes down to it, like Mitch said, I think I need to see someone prove it to me. And maybe Camp Point Central is that team. It's going to be close. It's going to be a great game, but I'm going to just give that slight edge to Lena-Winslow, because I just, until I see someone do it, I just don't know. I just feel like this, Lena-Winslow team they're just ready to go. They're physical. They're tough. They execute. They get the job done when they need to in the, on the biggest stage. So, all right, boys, that wraps us up. That's That's the breakdown and the analysis of the Class 1A state championship game between undefeated Lena-Winslow, undefeated Camp Point Central. The rematch is set for 10 a.m. Friday morning. I can't wait to watch this one. It's going to be great. Logan, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for, weighing in on your, knowledge of Camp Point Central.
Thanks for having me again. I'm not, I do way better at typing my ideas out than actually, speaking them out. I have a little bit of a stutter, I'm probably going to, I haven't really posted my prediction yet. It sounds like we're all very close. I think Mitch was the only one that had a prediction with more than one score.
Yeah. I think it's going to be great. And you did great. Your analysis was spot on. I love it.
I appreciate it.
Kyle,
I hope I make some Camp Point fans proud.
There you go. Absolutely. The Western Illinois, we're kind of adopting Camp Point Central as one of our own here on View from the West. And they're not in a conference we cover, but if Shuckman and Dewar cover them as well as Quincy and the schools down that way, like Macomb and other schools that we do cover, we're going to adopt, Camp Point Central. We like Coach Dixon and we like what they do down there. So,
yeah, he's such a good guy. It's such a great program over there. All the coaches on the staff just kind of buy in across all sports. I know Lena-Winslow does. Their coaching staff is very similar. You have coaches on the football team that coach other sports. But yes, I met Brad Dixon right before the game last season, and he had every right to be stressed out, but he still took time, shook my hand. There was no introduction really needed. I was very honored to kind of meet him then.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of mutual respect between coaches as well, between Coach Aaron and Coach Dixon. So you love to see that, and that makes for a great matchup. So, Kyle, you geared up for a trip to Hancock Stadium?
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I've only ever watched the state games on TV at Hancock. I've never been there for an actual game. So a new venue, an upgraded venue at that, going to Illinois State. I'm definitely excited. A little bit closer drive to home than Champaign, but a little bit further in DeKalb, of course. But I think that the change of venue has been great. I'm excited to see the impact it has for the viewership of the state championship. Just by looking at how people are interacting on social media, it seems like we might even see a larger crowd than what we've seen in years past with it being in Champaign and DeKalb. So I'm really intrigued to see how many people show up for these state championship games.
Yeah, for sure. I hope should be decent weather, hopefully, and hopefully they get some good crowds there. And I hope that Illinois State can really put their best foot forward and be a location that may be the permanent home for a while, because I think that it's kind of a blast for the past to get back to Hancock Stadium where they were historically for years. And I think it's a centralized location, and we've talked all about it, but I'm excited to see how it plays out there. So. Well, all right.
When was the last year they had it there?
Good question, Kyle. Do you know off the top of your head?
I think Kyle knows.
98.
I thought it was 98, and that would have not to make anybody feel old, but I would have been 1 year old.
Oh,
It was my senior year of high school. It was the last year it was played there.
There you go. All right.
Carthage beat Sterling Newman.
Yeah. I think
ironically, I was talking to Coach Unruh on Friday at the 8-man state championship game, and I told him, I said, one of my favorite state championship moments is when Carthage threw their 29th pass of the season for the game-winning touchdown over Sterling Newman.
There you go. Look at that recall. I think that game's on YouTube. I'll have to look that up, find that. That'll be awesome.
Go back.
All right.
It's out there.
Well, thank you so much to Logan Walters. You can find WIVC Football on Twitter, and Kyle Kampmier, NUIC Football. They have you covered on both sides of things, from the Camp Point Central side of things and the Lena-Winslow side of things, heading into this weekend's action. So thank you both for being here. Mitch, we still got more brackets to talk about here. So After a quick break, we'll jump in to Class 2A through 8A. We're giving your full state championship primer here for all the classes, everything you need to know. So we'll be right back. Hey, just want to take a minute to thank everyone who listens, who's followed along all season. If you like what you're listening to and you want to support us, consider heading over to PayPal. You can search us on PayPal, View from West Pod, or head to paypal.me/View from West Pod. We appreciate anyone who listens. If you want to help support us, we encourage you to go out and do so. Thank you so much.
The Quad City's first and only fantasy football show, For Fantasy's Sake, has you all covered when it comes to all of your fantasy football needs. The guys come to you live every Sunday morning during the football season from 10 to 11:30. They've got the best analysis, rankings, DFS, and gambling advice between the Rock and Mississippi Rivers. So tune in to For Fantasy's Sake every Sunday during the football season from 10 to 11:30 a.m. on Facebook and YouTube.
All right, so that's your look. That's the breakdown on Class 1A. Thank you again to Kyle and to Logan for stepping in and helping us out as our resident experts, knowing all things NUIC and WIVC. That's going to be a great matchup in Class 1A. If you want to hear a little more about that matchup, I sat down, did some one-on-one interviews with Rick Aaron, the head coach of Lena-Winslow, and Brad Dixon, the head coach from Camp Point Central. Depending on when you're listening to this, those interviews will be available on YouTube or on our podcast feed on Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday night. Now we're going to jump into Class 2A through Class 8A. We're going to give you a little bit of the primer here. But Mitch, if you want the rest of the story, maybe the good stuff, all the fine details, everyone needs to go check out the UniView State Championship previews. Am I right?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. If you really want to know who's going to win the game, you just got to look at the details of the uniform, and we'll have that all broken down for you.
That's right. That episode will be available sometime on Wednesday. So depending on when you're listening to this, you can head to our podcast feed. But that's a visual episode. So I really encourage everyone to go to our YouTube channel, watch the video. We'll be showing you the pictures of the uniforms as we discuss them. It's a lot of fun. It's our most anticipated episode of the year. I hope it's the listeners and the viewers as well, but yeah, I know it's our favorite. So,
great.
All right, well, here we go. Let's get into these class by class primers. So when you're sitting down to watch the state championship games, here's a little bit of the info, a little bit of the background that you need to know. Class 2A, it's going to be Wilmington versus Athens. It's two teams we're familiar with. We've called their names on state championship games recently. But let's talk about this year, 2023. How'd they get here?
Yeah, let's start in the North. We talked a lot about the 2A North this year, certainly in the postseason. You had the 5 seed Wilmington taking on the 2 seed Rural Forsyth, and it's Wildcats, the Wilmington, that are headed back to the state championship for the 4th time in their school history, 2nd time in the last 3 seasons. Greg, they beat the Trojans, who were previously unbeaten. But this was Wilmington's 3rd consecutive playoff win this year against an undefeated opponent. So 2nd round, quarterfinal, semifinal, all of their opponents were undefeated. That's how tough the 2A North was.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. When you start talking about, they beat Downs Tri-Valley, who is 10-0. They beat Seneca, who is 11-0. And then they took down Maroa Forsyth, who was 12-0 in the state semifinals. Yeah, that is a gauntlet. That is a run.
Yeah, not just undefeated, but those are 3 perennial powers in 2A. So, but Wilmington is certainly one of them as well. So in this one, the Wildcat defense forced 4 turnovers, and their star back, Kyle Farrell, scored 3 times. Both he and Ryan Kettman were over 100 yards to lead their rushing effort. The final score in this one was Wilmington 42, Maroa Forsyth 7.
Mitch, I believe that Wilmington, they're kind of one of your teams in the way that they don't throw the ball very much. They're kind of a option type team, and they, use a lot of misdirection on the ground, and they're right up your alley.
This matchup with Athens is going to be a lot of that. Not going to be a lot in both these first games on Friday. We're not going to see a lot of passing. Although, as we talked about in the Lena game, they're kind of getting into that now with the play action. Not a fan, you know how I am, but whatever it took to get to win against Hope, and whatever it may take to beat Central. But there'll definitely be a lot of running in those first 2 games.
Yeah, you got to throw a few wrinkles in there once in a while for sure. Talking about Wilmington, Mitch, going back a round or 2, I think we said that we thought, Seneca needed to prove it to us because they had gotten the win over Wilmington, but then we wondered, how good were they? And now they certainly proved that they were good. They beat Rock Ridge handily. And then you get to this matchup with Wilmington and Seneca, and it was a battle. Once again, for the second time this season, Wilmington and Seneca battled to the very end, a classic game there in the quarterfinals. But then the way that Wilmington won this game so convincingly makes me really think like, man, we underestimated like Seneca and how good they were, and Wilmington, obviously, because they really took care of business against a really good Maroa Forsyth team here. It really opened my eyes when I saw that final score.
Yeah. One thing they won't have, Greg, and I'm sure you have seen this, they will not have their awesome entrance into Hancock Stadium. Have you seen this?
I have seen it. I just I shared it on Twitter, on the X this weekend. It's cool. I'd heard all about it, but I finally saw a video. Really cool.
Yeah, so it's Jeff Reentz Stadium, Jeff Reentz is the coach, I think. It's kind of surrounded by the woods a little bit, and the players will come out of that, but lining them up or tunneling them into the field is just this line of motorcycles. And we've seen variations of this from other schools. The EPC does it with trucks, and there's other places that do it, but boy, it's intimidating to have all of those hogs roaring and then the Wildcats coming right out of the woods. So it's a really, really cool entrance.
Yeah. So I saw the video we saw was from the playoff game. So it was a little brighter outside, obviously played on a Saturday afternoon. I need to see video or photo of that at night because that would look even cooler. Late in the season when it's a Friday night game would look awesome coming out of the darkness of the woods. Like it's just a cool thing all the way around. So, and hey, Mitch, give us a quick note about Wilmington and Maroa Forsyth coming together here for Toys for Tots. That's a cool story.
Yeah, the coaches at Maroa Forsyth had posted this today that I think they might call it Trojans for Tots, something. I don't want to missay what it is, but it's a Toys for Tots type of promotion. And they must have been advertising it, and Wilmington got word of it because they brought a handful. It was a pretty good amount of toys. So shout out to Wilmington for that effort, and also for Maroa Forsyth for organizing such an event. So really cool to see both of those two communities coming together for a good cause. Yeah,
very cool. So that's Wilmington. We know about Wilmington. Let's talk a little bit about Athens. How'd they get here, Mitch?
Yeah, the 4-seed Athens, coming off of a wild win against Nashville there in the semis, where Nashville missed a field goal to win the game, and then they missed it. But in this one, they beat Shelbyville 39-6. The Warriors advanced to the state championship for the first time in school history, which that shocked me. They scored early, they scored often to beat Shelbyville in this one. They rolled up 538 yards rushing in the contest. They got it back. Cameron Begard led the attack with 295 yards on 23 carries. So again, did not know that this would be Athens' first state championship appearance, but good for that program because they've been good for a while. So yeah, I guess I stand corrected then, because when we started this, I said two names we've called in state championship games, but in the play, you could say the playoffs because that's certainly true. Yeah, I guess I was thinking, you're right. It was Lena-Winslow played Carrollton, and they're green and white. But yes, I was thinking that was Athens, but it wasn't. Yeah. And every year, Athens is on the cusp of 1A and 2A. So we talk about them a lot. Yeah. And then they always seem to make it far, but this is the first time that they've gotten over that hump and getting into finals weekend. All right. Well, I was getting confused, and I was thinking Carrollton, but yes, congratulations to Athens, who's never been there. So Athens and Wilmington will be playing the 10 a.m., 11 a.m. game? 10. No, the 1 is at 10. This is the 1 o'clock. Okay, the 1 o'clock. Correct. 10, 1, 4, 10, 1, 4, 7. There you go. Thank you, Mitch, for correcting me on that as well. Mm-hmm. All right. Should we jump into Class 3A? Let's do it. All right. The Byron Tigers get the win 26-20 over Lombard Montini. Wow, what a great game between two state powerhouses here.
I was trying to follow along with this one a little bit, but Mitch, I think you were watching or following along with this one. Give us the rundown on that.
Yes, follow along with it. I did not see. Let me just say off the jump, I did not see this coming. Just because, and we'll talk about Byron's numbers that they're looking at here in a minute. But from watching the Princeton Lombard Martini game, I just didn't see anything from Lombard Martini that I thought would exceed that well against Byron. Not taking anything away from Montini, they're a very, very good team. Certainly one of the most tradition-rich programs in the state. But again, just the style of their play, I thought matched up a little poorly against Byron's stout defense. But boy, I was incorrect because they put the Tigers in a bind. So Byron, a little bit unfamiliar territory in this one. They trailed Montini late in the fourth quarter until sophomore Caden Constantine, their star back, intercepted a Bronco pass at the 4. Now, to set this up, Greg, it was 4th down. And Montini, I don't remember what the score was at that point because I don't remember if Byron got the 2-point conversion. Either way, Montini called a timeout. And I think they were either lined up in a field goal or that was the decision that was going to be made. And I hope I remember this right. They come out, and then a penalty pushes them back a little bit. So they decide to not kick a field goal, and they attempt a pass. It gets intercepted by Constantine. Constantine returns it 46 yards. The next drive is 9 plays in which Constantine ran it 8 times.
Yeah, I mean,
he's their guy. I
Yeah.
mean, the 8th rush was a 1-yard touchdown plunge with 3:26 to play. That gave Byron the lead. And that TD was their 99th rushing touchdown this season. That is an IHSA record.
already an IHSA record, and you assume they're going to hit triple digits here in the state championship game. So,
Yeah. So, God, 99 rushing touchdowns, unbelievable. So they advanced to their 4th state championship appearance in the last 5 years. Of course, they won a couple seasons ago. Here's what we're looking at, and we talked about this, I think, probably in the Princeton preview, either the Princeton preview or the Dupac preview. This is historically one of the most dominant teams in Illinois history. Right now, they're sitting. They need 50 points to tie the all-time single season scoring record. I think they have 854. The record is 905. They need 3 touchdowns, however they do it, to break the single season touchdown record. And their 60.7 scoring average is the all-time high in Illinois state football history. So Lombard did a great job of cutting that down. But in the end, Byron prevails. And again, this is a team that's going to be in the record books, regardless of what happens, whether they win or they don't. This team will be remembered as one of the most dominant teams to ever have gotten on the field.
yeah, I mean, we talk about Byron year in and year out, seemingly being impressive, but these numbers are staggering. This is really impressive stuff. On the opposite side, you got a pretty impressive offense coming from the southern half of this bracket as well. Let's talk about the Mount Carmel Golden Aces getting the 63-48 win over Roxana. Man, high scoring, a lot of fireworks in this one. Tell us the first sentence here. I couldn't believe what you wrote.
Yeah. So in this one, the Golden Aces of Mount Carmel, and we'll get into this between the two Mount Carmels, but the Golden Aces scored on their first 9 possessions to outgun the Shells. I think both teams scored on their first 4, and then I don't know what happened, but their first 9 possessions, which would have been that would have gotten them to 63. I guess I don't know, how they did on extra points, but that would add up. So they're led by, and I know this hurts your heart, Greg, senior quarterback and Illinois commit Blaine Sisson rushed for 316 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's their Mr. Do-It-All. Leads Mount Carmel to their 6th state championship appearance. They won in 81, I think. They've had 3 runner-up finishes since 2001.
Yeah, man, I so disappointed. When we talked about it at the start of the season, we talked about Blaine Sisson. Actually, I think Edgy Tim was one of the ones who brought him up and said, Southern Illinois, commit. And he's a Southern Illinois graduate. So we were, we were talking about how excited we were. And then I saw his highlights from this weekend and I was like, man, this is great. This kid is electric. And then I come to the podcast notes and see that it's Illinois commit. And then I do the research, and sure enough, he flipped. He decommitted. Yeah. He's going to Illinois. Ah, man, it breaks my heart. Blaine, you're breaking my heart over here. So anyway, very impressive performance by him. I watched the highlights, and man, he is incredible. Great job against a really good Roxana team, and a great season for Roxana. Just could not keep up offensively. And man, you said it, Mitch, in the notes here. I want to see this Mount Carmel offense go up against Byron's defense. That's going to be fun.
Well, and just kind of looking at it now too, it's certainly they can be scored on. Mount Carmel can be scored on. I know Roxana has a good offense, but giving up 48 points. So yeah, I'm interested to see who wins that, because you've got a Byron offense who typically, again, they're scoring 60.7 per game. They're trying to break all of these records against a defense that might give up some points. I don't know. How did Mount Carmel do? I mean, this is.
Well, when you're looking at, you're looking at their playoff.
So they allowed 17. They allowed 21. They allowed 46 to Tolono Unity.
Yeah,
48 to Roxana. So no, I do not believe this defense is that great. So we could see a typical Byron performance here, but again, that might hedge on if Sisson and the Golden Aces offense, who is also very capable of scoring, can kind of keep that game in their hands as well. So this will be a really, really fun game there on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I think you gotta find an answer for Considine, right? Like, if you're that Mount Carmel defense, they're susceptible to giving up some points, and you got an athlete like that on the other side for Byron. That's tough. That's a tough matchup. But I'm excited. The matchup of Sisson and Considine going battling back and forth. That's great. That's good stuff. So should be entertaining there in Class 3A. All right, Class 4A. The final game that will be on Friday night will be St. Lawrence going up against Rochester. So we'll start with St. Lawrence. They get the win 31-30 in double overtime. Maybe one of the more dramatic games of the semifinals here in Class 4A.
Yeah, I mean, this is an 11 seed there in St. Lawrence. So they've had a road. They beat Dixon, who was 9-1 going into that game in the second round. They beat IC Catholic on a late touchdown in the quarterfinals. And then here, again, another late victory. They won in double overtime. So these Vikings, they are battle tested, no question about it. This one, it was the Vikings. Cesar Chavez blocked the potential game-tying extra point in the second overtime. It sent St. Lawrence to the state championship for the first time since 1979. They got an all-state running back, really good player, Aaron Bell. He gave the Vikings their very first lead of this game in that second overtime. They got the ball first. They scored. That was their first lead of the game. It was his fourth TD of the contest. And, Wheaton ends up scoring as well. It sounds like they debated about going for two or not. End up sending the field goal unit out. I think the coach had said that they've done so well with extra points this year that was just the safe play, and Chavez gets a hand on it and the ball falls short. So the whole scene there just goes nuts because the home game for St. Lawrence. So really cool to see that. Great game here in this semifinal.
Man, great effort from St. Lawrence to battle through the adversity there and not get your first lead until double overtime. I mean, that's fighting and scratching and clawing to get everything you can to keep yourself in the game, and they do, and they get into overtime and win it. So what an effort there. They're back in, like you said, state championship game for the first time since '79. So a fresh face there in St. Lawrence in Class 4A. They'll go up against a very familiar face to the state championship games it's been a year or two, but Rochester is back. Derek Leonard is back in the state championship game with the Rockets. They beat Murfreesboro 42-14. This is Derek Leonard and the Rockets their 9th time in the state finals. They're seeking to remain undefeated in the state finals. They've won their previous 8 appearances. So pretty good track record when they get into this final game. They're going to come away with a victory.
Yeah, 8-0 in state title performances there for Coach Leonard and the Rockets. So, yeah, like you said, they're back for the 9th time. Try to see if they can remain undefeated. They got a junior quarterback, Brian Zoloff. He threw for 3 touchdowns and 181 yards. Nolan Morozowski ran for 97 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, this one was another one that was kind of over early. It was running clock here against Murfreesboro, who is coming off of that exciting last second finish there in their quarterfinal game. But Rochester, boy, they're back. They're undefeated, back in familiar territory there in the state championship, and this should be a really good game to close out Friday night.
Yeah, interesting. It'll be a good matchup, obviously, between a St. Lawrence program, which is unfamiliar, with the state tournament experience or the state title experience, and now you have Rochester, who's been there a lot. So kind of a contrast there. And Mitch, if all else fails in watching the Class 4A game and what's happening on the field, look for our good friend Jason Foy. His referee crew, I believe, will be the ones on the field for that 4A state title game. So, yeah, that's exciting for them to get that crew. It's a hometown local crew here from the Quad Cities. They'll be out there, representing our area.
Yep. Yeah, and they'll be treated to a great game there in 4A for sure.
Yep. All right, Class 5A, early in the morning on Saturday, it'll be Nazareth Academy up against Joliet Catholic. So again, 2 pretty familiar names here that we've talked about quite a bit. What a, kind of, it's been a wild ride to say the least for Nazareth Academy. They find themselves in a state tournament or in a state championship game though.
Yeah, so for the second year in a row, they dig themselves out of a hole. This year, they started 0-4, and we've talked a lot about their schedule and who they play. They started 0-4. They win their next 4 games to get to 4-4. They lose in week 9 to this same St. Francis team. They sit at 4-5. They end up getting into the 5A playoffs, and they have not been slowed down here so far. They get in, and then they are just about close to running the table here. So they got a star QB in Logan Malachuk. He ran for 2 scores. 2 of the 5 rushing touchdowns that Nazareth had on the day. And again, sends the Roadrunners to their 7th title game appearance in school history. Greg, remind me, did they win last year or was that 2 years ago?
I can look, I can find out.
I'll look it up right now because I can't remember.
Let's see. In Class 5A, Nazareth Nazareth won a wild game over Peoria. Remember 45-44.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And they were, I think they started last year 2-4 and then kind of did the same thing. So they are plagued by a really tough schedule, but boy, did they make up for it. So once again, the Roadrunners are headed to the 5A state title game.
And they will be going up against Joliet Catholic. The Hilltoppers get the rivalry win over Providence Catholic, 31-21. So the Hilltoppers back in a state championship for the 20th time. We've talked about their uniforms before because they've been here. We've talked about their play on the field because they've been here. Here they are again, number 20 state championship game for the Hilltoppers.
Yeah. What I think they've got, I think both of them and Mount Carmel both have 14 and they both have 20 state title appearances. I think they both have 14 wins. So see if someone breaks that this year. But, this year, JCA has as they do every year, they've got a really, really good defense. In this game, I should say, they forced 6 turnovers in the semifinal win. Their lead back, H.J. Grigsby, 142 yards in this close win for the Hilltoppers. So, yeah, 2 really, really good programs that we've talked in, or at least we've seen a lot in the past in this sort of game. So, yeah, Saturday morning, 2 really good programs in Nazareth and Joliet going for it.
Pretty good uniform matchup there between Nazareth, the Roadrunners, and Hilltoppers. Yeah.
Yeah, great uniform matchup.
No spoilers. I don't know. I don't want to know where your head goes, but that'll be a good one to break down and analyze for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into Class 6A. Cary Grove and East St. Louis. Cary Grove gets the win 28-10 over Lake Zurich. Cary Grove runs that triple option, and it's awesome. It is so much fun to watch. We've seen it before. We'll talk a little bit about the rematch they have here in the state championship game, but tell us about how they got here, Mitch.
Yeah, so Cary Grove, the 3 seed there in 6A North. A team that we've seen a lot recently. This is their 7th state championship game appearance. It's the 3rd in 5 years. So in the history of this podcast, we've talked about them quite a bit. As you mentioned, they got that triple option attack. They put together these long, sustained, time-consuming drives that really just keeps the ball out of their opponent's hands. They're back. Their fullback, Logan Abrams, 4 touchdowns in this one. Cool note here from Joe Stevenson from Shaw Media, Friday Night Drive. The Trojans are 16-1 in their last 17 playoff games. So this is a very, very good Cary Grove program for the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Cary Grove won a state championship game in 2021 when they defeated East St. Louis. And that was one of the greatest state title games of all time. One of the best games I've ever watched. If it's on YouTube somewhere, search it up, go find it, go watch it if you're unfamiliar. I might go watch the replay of it this week anyway.
I know it is. I know that it is.
Okay, it's awesome. It was such just a great, coaching effort from Cary Grove, and just the expertise of their triple option attack going up against the high-powered, super athletes of East St. Louis, combined with their line and their, just their ability all the way around. What a game that was. Cary Grove came away with the win. So I'm excited to see this rematch just based on that one alone. Let's talk about East St. Louis, the Flyers. They're a team we've talked about. They've been here a lot.
Yeah, the 4 seed East St. Louis coming out of the South. They beat the 2 seed Washington. This one was closer than you expected because Washington was playing a backup quarterback. So the Flyers pulled off a furious comeback here from Washington. Washington scored twice in a 60-second stretch in the 4th quarter. That got this game to a 1 possession. I think it was 26-18, I believe it was. But a long touchdown by Flyer quarterback Robert Battle sealed the victory for the Flyers. So they head back to the 6A title game for, I think, at least the 3rd straight year.
Yeah, it could be. I know
because they won last year against Prairie Ridge.
Yep.
You referenced their loss to Cary Grove. I don't know if they went the year before that. So it's at least their 3rd straight. And as always, without mentioning, they are the defending 6A champions.
Yeah. And there you mentioned quarterback Robert Battle. I believe he was in that game. He was the quarterback a couple years ago when they played Cary Grove. So he's an experienced quarterback, very talented quarterback.
I think he's an Illinois commit too. I think.
Okay. And speaking of East St. Louis, I just saw Luther Burden III making some incredible plays for Mizzou this weekend. So, he continues to impress at the college level, leading Mizzou to a great season. So, a lot of fun, just football to watch when it comes to East St. Louis. They're just a high-powered team. And on the opposite side, same with Cary Grove, just a fascinating team to watch with their triple option and how well they execute and the athletes they put in the, in the positions to win a lot of really good football.
Yeah, 2 wildly different offensive strategies here between these 2 teams. That's always going to make up for a really fun game. So if it's anything like it was 2 seasons ago, boy, we're in for a good one there on Saturday just after lunch.
Yep, there you go. All right. Yep. So get some lunch, settle in, watch that one for sure. Maybe put up some Christmas lights in between games and get back in. And
I wonder if does Jim Spencer do all the games on Saturday?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay, I know he does some of them.
I think so. He has.
I bet that, do they stagger him? I don't know how they do it, but
yeah,
he's part of that crew. They do a great job.
Yep. Well, all right. Class 7A. Downers Grove North gets the win over Normal Community 42-0 to advance, and Mount Carmel gets the win 64-26 over Batavia to advance. So it's Downers Grove North against Mount Carmel. We'll start with Downers Grove North. The Trojans hold previously unbeaten and top-seeded Normal Community to just 68 yards in this one. So Normal Community was a, high-powered offense, and man, if they'd have won this game, they'd be playing in their own backyard in the state championship game, but they fall short. Downers Grove North spoils that party, and they get the win here, the big-time win.
Yeah, they've got a really, really stud quarterback, sophomore Owen Lance, who passed for 199 yards and 3 scores. Jimmy Janucci had a pick 6 in the second quarter that kind of set the tone in this one early. So, yeah, this was, again, like you said, Normal Community was unbeaten. They were the top seed in 7A, and they just could not do anything against Downers Grove North in this one. This was a great game for them, but boy, did they have a one heck of an opponent coming in here on Saturday.
Mitch, their sophomore quarterback, Owen Lansu, you mentioned, his name. I think I've been seeing scouting video and like a recruitment video on him on Twitter for since he was in 6th grade. It's it's been all over. I don't know how it ends up in my feed all the time. I think just, either Edgy Tim or the different, people that I follow, but yeah, he looks like he's the real deal. So he looked good way back then. So he looks good now. So
I'll tell you, he looks good now, then forever. Mount Carmel's running back. He's a Wisconsin commit, Darian Dupree. He scored 4 times in the first 14 minutes.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah.
And there's one quarterback, Jack Elliott, had 518 total yards, and I think 430 of them were passing. There was one of his touchdowns in the first quarter. Dupree is kind of coming just right up the seam. Elliott's pass gets deflected, and Dupree has to turn his body, distort it in a way that any normal human being would break their back, and just extends his arms and gets this incredible catch and just runs into the end zone. One of his other touchdowns was just completely amazing, that he just broke tackles and spun out of another one and kept his balance. So we talked a lot about this Mount Carmel team in the Quincy game. This could very well be one of the most talented teams this year in Mount Carmel. They have no sign of being slowed down unless they're playing an 8A team in Loyola Academy. But this is like Joliet Catholic. This is the Caravan's 20th state championship appearance. This is the third, and this is I got another note after this. This is the third straight season that Mount Carmel has knocked Batavia out of the playoffs. Batavia has had some really, really good teams these past couple of years. Last year it was in the state title game. This year it's in the semifinal. But what I was going to say is we talk a lot about this public versus private thing, right?
Yeah.
I think Batavia was trying to send a message. They had a banner on their stands that said, one team, one town, or it was the other way around, one town, one team. I think it was what it was.
Okay. Yeah.
So trying maybe some subtle messaging there, but yeah, they've ran into the Caravan for 3 straight seasons, and the Caravan have had the upper hand each time.
Yeah. So Mount Carmel against Downers Grove North in the 7A state title game. That'll be one to watch. One more left in Class 8A. Loyola Academy, another name, the Ramblers. We've called them out, talked about them plenty. They get the win 23-14 over York. So they're moving on to the state title game against Lincoln Way East. Is it the Griffins?
The Griffins.
Yeah, we've talked about their logo before. We'll get more into that in the UniView state championship preview episode. But the Griffins, very unique logo. They get the win 49-6 over Barrington. So it's Loyola Academy against Lincoln Way East. Mitch, tell us how we got here.
Yeah, in the Loyola game, the Ramblers, they trailed 14-3 early, and I remember this was one of the first games on Saturday, and it was kind of like, whoa, like York could be for real, but we talk about those kind of crock-pot style type of games where it kind of turned into that, where Loyola just slowly got their way back, and they're the top team in 8A for a reason. They go back to the 8A title game for the second straight season to play the same team for the second straight season in Lincoln Way East, who beat, as you mentioned, Barrington 49-6. Really good defense there in the Griffins. They forced 6 turnovers in this one. Here's your stat, Greg. The 6 points from Barrington are the only points Lincoln Way East allowed in the postseason this year.
Oh my gosh, Wow, that is an incredible run.
So shutouts all the way through until Barrington got their touchdown. Quarterback Brandon Tischler accounted for 4 touchdowns on the day. Also, here's your other nugget: 43-point win was the largest ever in an 8A semifinal game.
That's a good stat line there. That's a Brian Stocking kind of, stat gold there.
He's writing it in his notebook right now.
Exactly. So Loyola and Lincoln Way East is a rematch of last year's 8A state title game and 2021 8A quarterfinal. Loyola has won both those matchups. So
so just like Mount Carmel and Batavia, these two teams have met 3 years in the playoffs in a row. So should be two standout 8A teams here to close out what should be a really, really fun weekend.
Yep. Well, let's recap them here. Of course, Class 1A, Lena-Winslow going up against Camp Point Central. You have in 2A, Wilmington versus Athens. In 3A, you have Byron going up against Mount Carmel, Illinois, the team from down south. In 4A, you have St. Lawrence and Rochester. On Saturday, in Class 5A, you'll have Nazareth going up against Joliet Catholic. In 6A, Cary Grove and East St. Louis. 7A, Downers Grove North and Mount Carmel, the Jordan Lynch-led Mount Carmel out of the Chicago area. And you
Bears
have
legend.
That's Bears legend. Yeah, something like that. And you have 8A Loyola Academy against Lincoln Way East. So there you go.
So real quick, because we didn't say it, Mount Carmel is the public school team out of Mount Carmel, Illinois.
Yeah.
Mount Carmel is the private school out of Chicago. So
I tried to clarify. Yeah.
Right.
Tried to clarify by saying Mount Carmel, Illinois against, in 4A or 3A. And then, yes. But it is.
Yeah, I guess Mount Carmel, Chicago doesn't go by academy or anything. So like Joliet Catholic does. So
okay,
it gets confusing. But I didn't look this up, but I imagine it's true. This is the first time that both Mount Carmels have been playing in a state championship game.
I was just gonna speculate that as well. Yeah, I would assume.
I didn't look up the history and compare the years, but I would imagine it's the first.
Quick tease ahead: 2 really good uniforms, both Mount Carmels.
You know it. That just looking right at the list, that 7A game with Downers Grove North and Mount Carmel is probably, I'm gonna look real quick. Yeah, that's probably my favorite. 2 really good uniforms there.
All right. So that's a little tease ahead for, of course, we've already talked about it, the UniView State Championship preview episode. That will be available on Wednesday. Check it out. It may already be available depending on when you're listening to this, but go check it out. It's on YouTube. It's in our podcast feed, but you're going to want to see the visuals. That's the fun part of that one. So that's where we really dive into the, the fine details there in the state championship games, talking about uniforms. You can also hear one-on-one coaches interviews in the Class 1A game from head coach Rick Aaron of Lena-Winslow and head coach Brad Dixon from Camp Point Central. They'll give you their insights and their thoughts on that 1A state championship game rematch. So there you go, Mitch. Those are your primers. That's the stage is set for a great weekend of football. I can't believe we're here. I mean, I guess I can, but it's also, it's hard to believe.
Yeah, what is it? 13 weeks?
Yep.
Probably 15 weeks of preseason shows and such. So yeah, it's been a long run. It's been another great season here. And yeah, to think that this is going to be our last, whether we do an instant reacts or whether we do just a regular show, kind of our last game, maybe recapping results before we get into some off-season stuff. But we love these 2 days. It's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. We're grateful to have a team playing once again in Lena-Winslow. So, but regardless, all 8 games are going to be great. Always a fun time for the state of Illinois, and looking forward to watching. I'll have them all on, Greg. I don't think Notre Dame plays until Saturday night, and they play on the Pac-12 network, and I don't have any idea how to watch that. So these are probably my football watchings for the day.
Yeah, there you go. All right, that sounds good. Well, thank you to everyone who listens, who's been listening all year long. We appreciate it. We'll be back. We'll be talking. We'll be recapping these state championship games. We'll also be talking about our players of the year, Mitch. We'll talk about some of our games of the year.
Some superlatives to give out, no doubt.
Absolutely. All the superlatives to give out, the awards to hand out at the end of the year. We'll be getting to that in another month or so. So, stick around just as the off season hits. We won't be done talking football yet. We're never really done talking football.
They still got to vote on district football. We could be talking about a whole bunch of stuff here coming up.
Oh, that's true. That's true. There could be a lot of very relevant conversation happening even when football's over. So,
yeah.
So stay tuned. We'll be, when news breaks, when things happen, we'll be talking about it. We'll be talking about our awards, and we'll be, always ready to jump on and hit record and talk football.
Yeah, we're always on call. We look forward to this. We look forward to the off season to take a break, but we're always ready to jump in when it's needed. And usually every off season, there's something that we have to either kind of compile everything that's happened or something big occurs. So, we'll be ready. Speaking of nothing, did you see that former Newman head coach Brandon Kressmer is now the interim head coach at Western?
I did see that. Yeah. So, unfortunately, it comes with the news that, they dismissed their head coach. And it's been a struggle at Western Illinois for wins. But I saw Coach Kretzmer walking the sidelines at Princeton Kewanee earlier this season. Talked to him for a few minutes. So really good to catch up with him. And very excited for him in this opportunity. I know that, similar to when he took the job at Newman, when I've talked to him about just coaching, he's all in, right? He dives all in, gives it 100% effort. He's really committed down there right now to turning that program around. So yeah, I'm excited for him. It's great opportunity for him.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, that'll do it. Thank you to everyone who listens. We'll be back next week talking more high school football, of course, because that's what we do. We'll see you then. That'll do it for this week's episode of View from the West. Thank you so much for listening. I encourage you to go out to Apple Podcasts or Podbean and subscribe so you can follow along, and downloads will come automatically every week. You can follow along on Twitter at ViewFromWestPod. You can also email me if you're interested in being a sponsor, viewfromwestpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.